Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Great to see you. I've got an update for you on what is shaping up to be a very active pattern with Arctic air and the potential for a rare setup that could lead to snow quite far south here within the next 10 days. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And if you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. Also, comment, let me know where you're watching from and what you want to see as we go ahead and get into the second half of January here. Now, all of that will help these videos stay in your feed. It'll keep you up to date with the latest model guidance and a breakdown of that guidance. Now, a couple other things. Obviously, I haven't posted a video in a couple of days. If you missed it, I was out of town in New Orleans at a conference over the weekend, but luckily back in Charlotte now, and couldn't think of a better time to be back as we are entering, again, this very active pattern. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive on into things because a lot to discuss in today's video. Now, we'll start with satellite imagery, and you might be looking at it and thinking, well, there's not a whole lot happening right now, and well, you'd be correct. I think the real show is going to come in about 5 days or so and last probably through at least 10 days, and that'll be a big shot of Arctic air out of the north, and that's going to set up the stage for really everything we're going to discuss in today's video. But before we ever get there, we do already have one air mass of very cold air working in, and it's not hard to find on satellite. It's most of the time we use satellite to find clouds, but when you have very cold air masses like this one up into Canada, you can actually see it on our infrared loop. So these bright colors are very cold temperatures that is being detected by satellite, and normally those cold temperatures are on the tops of clouds, but it's so cold at the surface that the satellite thinks it's clouds. So very interesting stuff, and very cold for sure for you folks up into Minnesota, the Dakotas, and up into central Canada. You're definitely feeling that winter air, and get used to it because this is going to be something that lasts for quite some time, as 2025 has really started off with quite a cold pattern across much of North America. Now, as we go ahead and get on into radar right now, not a lot happening, but that cold air pushing south is producing just enough lift for some snow and a lot of lake effect as well. But you'll see kind of more pronounced snow into the Chicago area, who hasn't seen a lot of snow so far this winter, back down into Bloomington, Ottawa, Illinois there, Lafayette, Indiana, much of western and southwestern Michigan seeing some of that snow. And then check out this lake effect cranking up off the Tug Hill, off of Lake Erie, plenty of that lake effect. That's another thing that we've seen plenty of this winter, and it is continuing as this Arctic push of air moves over the Great Lakes that have yet to freeze over. Now, that could change after our next cold air mass. I do think eventually they're going to start to give way here, and the lake effect machine will probably simmer down a little bit over the next couple of weeks, just due to the lakes kind of, losing that moisture content as they kind of freeze over a little bit. But right now, we're still in full swing off of the Great Lakes here. Now, other than that, pretty quiet. We've got a little bit of snow back into the northern Rockies, but no major storm systems currently working across the lower 48, which is good news because I think you're going to be about tired of major storms by the time that we get through with January. Now, let's take a look at our current alert map, and you can definitely kind of get the same idea. Not a lot happening. Now, we do have winter weather advisories and lake effect snow warnings that for some reason aren't quite showing up, but right here along the Great Lakes through Erie, up through Buffalo, into the upstate of New York, we do have those lake effect snow warnings for that push of cold air that is once again producing that snow. But really just this is the only place that we're seeing active weather right now is into the Midwest and into the interior Northeast, where that snow is falling and that cold air is moving in. Now, outside of there, it is still quite chilly for a lot of folks, but relatively clear skies, and that'll stay the same way for at least a couple more days before things go downhill, I think, once we get closer to the weekend. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of our latest model data, because it is really pointing to quite the shot of cold air, and we've actually seen pretty good agreement among the models. What I'm showing you here is the European ensembles, and this is one of our most reliable metrics for kind of pattern changes in the longer range, and time right above my head, so you'll get a good idea of when we're talking. I'll go ahead and try to break down the meteorology behind this map for you. Now, these are our 500 millibar height anomalies. So basically, think of this as an air mass map. The red colors, those are warmer air masses. The blue colors, those are cooler air masses. Also, generally speaking, where you see those blue colors, that is more likely to produce some sort of storminess. That could be rain, that could be snow, that could be ice, that could be any sort of precipitation. But generally, these blue air masses, at least on one side of them, creates enough lift to kind of lead to some sort of storm system forming. So you can already see that right now. That cold air mass I talked about, well, here it is right over the northern tier of the United States from Minnesota into the Great Lakes, back through Wisconsin, and working eventually through the Ohio Valley throughout the next day or so. And you'll see that kind of happen here. Now, this first shot of cold air gets into the northeast. This is by Tuesday evening, or this evening, I guess is probably a better way to word it, but not quite digging all the way south. So this will be more of a glancing blow, but still a very cold Arctic air mass. After that, we are going to warm up a little bit. Now, you'll see another small little piece of energy dives down. That could produce some snow, I do think, going into Wednesday and Thursday. I'll kind of draw it out for you. Here's our trough. Here's the piece of energy. It kind of swings on down into the northeast and connects to our bigger piece of energy. And that could produce some quick snow, more of a clipper-like system, more of an interior northeast snow event. Not so much for the I-95 corridor. Now, after that, we're going to get kind of teased a little bit. You see this big ridge that kind of builds in? That's those orange colors. This is by the afternoon of this coming Friday, and you're going to think, all right, Gerald, what are you talking about? Where's this cold air? Well, it's coming. Don't worry. Enjoy whatever little warm-up we get at any point this week, because then the hammer drops, and look at this massive trough of cold air dig down into the United States. This is a very cold polar air, or Arctic air rather, not even polar. So this is about as cold as it gets, coming straight from the Arctic freezer here and moving south into the lower 48. And this is when things get interesting. Obviously, this is going to bring the cold air. Then the question is, does it bring precipitation? Does it bring lift for a storm system? And I think it will at least bring one storm system, potentially multiple rounds of winter weather quite far south. And I'll show you the setup here in just a moment. But get the idea here. This is less than a week from now, so this is not in La La Land. This is 5, 6, 7 days or so out, moving right down into the heart of the country, likely dumping this just freezer of cold air into the central plains and working into the east, and it holds on all the way through about the 23rd, the 24th, and then finally we get about to the 25th, and then the models moderate us and reintroduce that southeast ridge and warm us up a little bit in the east. But before we get there, we're going to run the chance for some pretty cold air. Let's go ahead and break down exactly how cold that air could be. Now, this is our latest European operational run, so these are not the ensembles. This is the straight King Euro, as people like to call it here. And this is this afternoon. Obviously, you can see those cold temperatures up in the Midwest, into the Ohio Valley. Elsewhere, still chilly, but not quite as cold as what we're seeing up into the north-central part of the country. Now, we'll move this ahead into time. That cold air oozes south. It stays very cold into the Ohio Valley, into the northeast. Does clip the Carolinas in the southeast, definitely below average temperatures, but not quite a freezer, I would say. Still definitely chilly, though, and we're already at the coldest time of year, so you add below average on top of that, obviously it's going to be cold out there. We'll keep moving it ahead into time. This is that brief warm-up I was telling you about. This is Friday, Saturday. Notice this is actually a pretty potent warm-up. We go from, 20 degrees below average in Iowa today, maybe, to maybe 20 degrees above average by Friday. So the sinuses, the allergies, you're going to feel them. But if you're a fan of the cold, don't worry. Here it comes by the weekend. That big shot of cold air moves southbound. And I mean, folks, this is about as cold as it gets. These are temperatures forecasted Tuesday morning, or temperature anomalies, rather. So this model is saying we're going to be about 40 degrees below average into Ohio, portions of West Virginia, running 20 to 25 degrees below average all the way down to the Gulf Coast through New Orleans, the Florida Panhandle, down into the Texas Gulf Coast. This is a true shot of Arctic air, and we get generally at least one or twice of these, or I guess one or two of these each year or each winter, and this will definitely be one of them. Now, the last air mass kind of moderated a little bit more than maybe the models thought. This one, I think this one's going to be a bit colder than the last cold spell we had. We're a little bit closer into time. The models are a little bit more latched onto it, so I would go ahead and expect this to be at least close. Now, we might not quite hit 40 degrees below what we should be, but maybe 30 degrees below what we should be. Either way, it's going to be cold and potentially dangerous cold, and you'll notice this hangs on. This is the 21st into the 22nd. Into the 23rd, and then after that we finally begin to moderate a little bit, at least on the model. Now we'll see if that changes, as that is about 10 to 15 days away, but the next 10 days look very cold and very active. Now, obviously, I could say it's 30 degrees below what it should be. But what does that really mean? Well, these are potential low temperatures in that time frame. We're talking, 5, 10 below zero up into the plains. We'll move it even a little bit further east. We're talking single digits in the Ohio Valley. Lows probably in the teens through portions. Actually, I'm sorry, I lied to you. These are high temperatures, not low temperatures. So scratch everything I said. Let me try that again. These are high temperatures. I was going to say that doesn't seem too cold. But it's only going to get up into potentially the negatives, into portions of Minnesota, -5, -10. We're only getting into the teens and 20s into the Ohio Valley, even all the way down into Mississippi, Alabama. High temperatures potentially not even cracking the freezing line. Check out the freezing line for highs. We're not going to get above freezing for much of the lower 48 by the time we get about a week or so out from now. So cannot really, reiterate how cold this air mass is going to be. Now let's talk about low temperatures, because if you thought the highs were cold, these are the potential lows. Let me back it up just a little bit here and get us in the right time frame. Low temperatures, we're talking, potentially -10, -15 up into the northern plains, single digits into the Tennessee Valley, teens and single digits into the Carolinas, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, well below freezing along the Gulf Coast, all the way down to New Orleans, Houston, even into the Florida Panhandle. So very cold temperatures on the way with this air mass. And that's something I think we're very confident in. So go ahead and prepare for that now. Whatever kind of precautions you would normally take for the cold, go ahead and start thinking about that while we're in this slightly quieter period right now. Now, the other part of cold air mass and a big cold front is what kind of precipitation could come with it. And I think there's at least one storm system that we're confident on and feeling kind of locked in with. And here it is. This is this week, obviously pretty quiet for now. This is that little clipper system I mentioned. That could bring some snow into the Midwest, into the Northeast by Thursday, into Friday here. And then here comes the actual front. This is Friday afternoon. So ahead of it, a little bit of a warm up down south into the Ohio Valley, into the Tennessee Valley. Here comes our low pressure system, and here is the Arctic front associated with it. Now, this could bring some snow into the Rockies. It'll already be cold before it. It'll be even colder after it. But more importantly, I think we're going to get a pronounced storm system here by Friday afternoon, and this is Saturday morning. This is likely to bring some snow into the Ohio Valley, into the Midwest, portions of the Northeast here by Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon. I think all rain for the Southeast, not any snow with this storm system. But stay tuned a little bit longer. Your time's coming, trust me. We'll keep on going. This is Saturday evening into Sunday. A little bit of snow into the interior Northeast, maybe even portions of the I-95 could pick up a little bit of snow, but this doesn't look like a big storm. It looks more like a transitional piece of energy. So this will get us from that warmer pattern, or at least more average pattern probably, to what is a well below average temperature pattern. You can see that little cold air producing some snow even all the way down into Texas potentially off of this. And by the time we get into this weekend, we kind of get locked into the freezer a little bit. And that's when things turn interesting for snow lovers through really much of the lower 48 once we get about a week or so out from now. Now let's talk about snow chances with the first storm, and then we'll talk about all of the more exciting southern snow potential after that. So this is the chance of at least an inch of snow accumulating off of the first storm system. Here's our little clipper system. This is Thursday into Friday. Pretty good little chance of snow through the Midwest, through the interior Northeast. And then here comes our actual winter weather event as we get that transition. So kind of two areas to watch. One into the Rockies. I think we'll get some energy out here that produces snow, and then some snow into the Ohio Valley, into the interior Northeast, and through the Alps could see some snow as well by the time we go into Sunday, and really Saturday into Sunday, probably more in that time frame. And then that clears on out of here. And that's when things begin to get interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at some models. This is the part I will go ahead and always say it whenever we're this far out. And it's not too terribly far. It's about 7, 8, 9 days. So it's not 15 days away. We're not taking a look at the 360-hour GFS by any means. But the signal is there for a potential deep south winter storm. Here's the latest GFS from this morning, and it showed that potential perfectly. And then I'll show you the latest European, which shows the other potential. And we'll kind of talk about the difference between the models, why they're different. We'll look at ensembles, and we'll break it all down for you. So here we go. This is the latest GFS, hot off the press, really just ran about an hour or two ago. Here's that first storm system. That's the one that's going to bring the cold air behind it. So that works on through, and then we get into Sunday Sunday morning. And you're thinking, all right, well, it's cold. You can see that. See all these blue lines, these isotachs. That tells me that that cold Arctic air has spilled south, and we are feeling it for sure through much of the lower 48. Now, after that, you'll notice some snow beginning to develop here into the Delmarva, Virginia. This would be next Sunday. So this is this week. Again, not out in La La Land. And basically what's happening here is you're just getting little pieces of energy to rotate around this Arctic air mass, and that's pushing the snow, or I guess what was once rain, back into the cold air mass, and it's falling as either snow or ice or some sort of winter precipitation as they're kind of overlapping that cold air with that moisture. So there's one little piece of energy on the GFS model that swings up the I-95 corridor through later this weekend into early next week. And then on the model, we get a much more potent piece of energy back into Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, and this is going to swing all the way through the Gulf Coast and try to move up the eastern seaboard on this model. Again, this is about 6 days from now, so not La La Land by any means. Also not right around the corner, so it's way too soon to talk snow totals or snow or ice or any precipitation type. We're still just trying to figure out if the storm is even going to happen. The GFS, though, says it is. Here we go. Check out this winter weather breaking out across Texas by next Tuesday morning, moving into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, into Georgia, the Carolinas. And folks, this is about as nasty of a deep south winter storm as you can draw up on the map, with widespread ice and snow from the Gulf Coast of Texas all the way up into the Carolinas, into Virginia. I mean, this is getting ice as far south as the Gulf Coast into Mississippi, Alabama, portions of Louisiana, riding it up the coast a little bit, and then it gets close to the northeast, but kind of flattens out a little bit, and then it gets on out of here. And the rest, I'll show you the rest of the model run. Everything after that, definitely La La Land, but you get the potential here that we kind of just continue to run this pattern of an active southern stream with a piece of energy after piece of energy kind of swinging on through. Now, what about the European? Is the European on board? Well, yes and no. I guess quick answer is not exactly like the GFS, and you'll see that here. Here's that first piece of energy. That's that pattern changing piece I mentioned earlier. And then after that, we get one little piece of energy on the European. It agrees with that first little shot Sunday into Monday. That could definitely bring snow to the northeast or ice or some sort of winter precipitation. And then we get another little piece of energy. You see it down here bubbling up into Texas right around that same time frame, a little bit later. This is next Wednesday instead of next Tuesday on this model, but just doesn't quite fully hook up like the GFS did, and it's a lot less exciting of a model run. And then kind of later on, you see the same general idea of some little pieces of energy on the southern stream kind of hanging around. So obviously not the exact same, but if we take a look at the models and what's kind of bringing the snow in the first place, I think you'll get the idea that they're not that far off from each other. So let's go ahead and take a look at it here. This is the GFS model for the same time frame. So the Sunday piece of energy, here's kind of the setup. We've got this little piece of vorticity kind of hanging around the East Coast. This could lead to enough lift along the Atlantic seaboard that could produce some winter weather that tries to ride up the East Coast. That's the first piece. So, that's the setup there on the GFS. We'll move it into the next piece. Here it is, folks. It enters kind of out west by next Sunday and then dives all the way through the plains, the southern plains, and becomes this big, strong piece of southern energy that rides right through the southern jet stream, or our subtropical jet stream, as we call it. And remember, cold air will not be an issue. There will be plenty of cold air in place for now. It could be ice, it could be snow. In the south, that's always its own kind of trouble thing to forecast, but the energy is there to produce the winter weather on this model, and you can see it riding right through the Gulf Coast, and then eventually kind of up through the mid-Atlantic, and then you'll even see another little piece of energy after that. So it stays active through at least, I think, about the 25th or so of January. Now, the European model, what does it show? Well, this is that Sunday potential, same general idea. We get this little piece of vorticity to kind of try to swing on through the northeast. That could, once again, produce enough lift for a weak little coastal storm. We'll monitor it. I'll keep you up to date on the snow chances on that one. And then after it, same general idea, folks. Here's the piece of energy. It's here on the European. The only difference is it doesn't tilt negative quite quick enough. And I talk about that a lot on the channel. Basically, the progression of energy is it starts positively tilted, and then it becomes neutrally tilted, and then it becomes negatively tilted. For a big winter storm along the Gulf Coast and in the deep south, what you want is a negative tilt back here. You want it to become neutrally tilted by about Texas and then become positively tilted by about Alabama and Georgia. And that's kind of what the GFS did. The European doesn't quite do that. And thus we don't get the big winter storm. But the energy is there, and that is very important. And that's a good sign that the models are at least on the same track. Another good sign the models are on the same track here is in the ensembles. And you can see that pretty well here. The chance of at least an inch of snow showing up pretty well here on the models. This is for that first piece of energy right into here. You'll notice a snow signal into the northeast through New England down into the mid-Atlantic. This is by next Sunday into Monday. Pretty good little signal here, about a 20, 30, 40% chance of snow on the European ensembles. That's not bad for about a week out. So that's a good sign for you folks in the Northeast who are very snow deprived. Trust me, I know, especially you folks along the I-95 corridor. I've definitely read the comments on that. And then here comes the next piece of energy, and look at this, folks, another signal for snow, already running about a 10 to 20% chance of snow into the deep south on the European ensembles for a time period about 7 or 8 days from now. We'll say really 6 to 8 days, that time frame, because the GFS and the European differ a little bit on the exact date. So obviously the signal is there. What about the GFS and its ensemble members? Well, here's the Northeast winter event. You can see, again, a good signal here, running about a 20, 30, even 40% chance of some accumulating snow from Virginia up the I-95 through Maine with that system. And then here comes the next one bubbling out west and getting to the south, and an even bigger signal on the GFS ensembles. This is, heck, passing 20, 30% chance into portions of the Carolinas for snow. And it's just a pretty beautiful look here. It's about as good as it gets for this time frame. Now, the question will be, obviously, does it trend up? Does it trend down? Does it trend kind of sideways and just go back and forth for a little bit? That's what we'll need to find out next as we continue to kind of monitor this and find out what's going to happen next. Either way, though, confident a big shot of Arctic air and the potential for some sort of kind of rare deep south snow, potential for I-95 snow. Really, plenty of folks could get in on the fun with this pattern. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you on this Tuesday morning. Definitely, if you have questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll try my best to get to answering them. I will mention today is my first day of class, so it's going to get a little busier for me this time of year, obviously, with school starting back. But I will definitely try to stay engaged with you folks in the comments. Also, you can follow me on social media, on Twitter or X, whatever you'd like to call it. I post pretty frequently there, and the link for that is in the description. All right, folks, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you all next time.